Fleet Commander Zarvik stared at the holographic display in front of him. The blue light from the screen made his gray skin look almost purple. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence as he scrolled through the data. Earth, he muttered. Such an unremarkable planet. The report on his screen showed Earth's classification. Threat Level 2. The description read, primitive species with rudimentary space travel capabilities, confined to home system. Non-interventionist approach recommended. Junior analyst Krell stood nearby, his thin fingers tapping nervously against his uniform. Commander, if I may speak freely? Krell asked. Zarvik waved a hand. Go ahead. I've been studying the humans for some time now. Their adaptability is remarkable. They went from first flight to landing on their moon in less than 70 years. That's unprecedented speed. Zarvik let out a sound that resembled a laugh. And yet they've been stuck in their own system for nearly a century since then. The classification has stood for 200 cycles. The Council sees no reason to change it. Krell looked like he wanted to say more but thought better of it. Prepare the quarterly report for the Council, Zarvik ordered. No changes to Earth's status. Yes, Commander, Krell said, bowing slightly before leaving the room. When Krell was gone, Zarvik looked back at the image of Earth. Something about the humans bothered him. They were too unpredictable. But rules were rules, and the hegemony had survived 50,000 cycles by following protocol. On the other side of the galaxy, Navy Captain William Carter walked through a long underground hallway. The facility was buried deep beneath the Nevada desert. Few people on Earth knew it existed. Captain, we're ready for you, said Engineer Susan Morgan as she fell into step beside him. How's the device looking today? Carter asked. Better than yesterday. We think we've solved the power fluctuation issue. They entered a large chamber. In the center stood a strange machine. It didn't look like human technology because it wasn't. At least not entirely. 20 years ago, a hegemony scout ship had crashed in Arizona. The aliens never came looking for it. Earth's governments had kept it secret and worked to understand the technology ever since. Dr. Lopes thinks we finally cracked their communication system, Susan said, pointing to a man working at a control panel. Dr. Lopes looked up and waved them over. Captain, you're just in time. We're about to test the FTL communicator. FTL? Carter asked. Faster than light, Susan explained. The aliens must use it to talk across the galaxy. Normal radio waves would take years. Carter nodded. And you think we can listen in? That's the hope, Dr. Lopes said. If we can hear what they're saying about us, we'll have an advantage if they ever decide to come here. Susan looked concerned. Do you really think they would? Carter's face grew serious. I don't know, but I'd rather be prepared than sorry. Dr. Lopes turned back to his controls. Powering up now. The strange device in the center of the room began to hum. Lights flickered on its surface. The team watched in silence. Anything? Carter asked after a minute. Dr. Lopes shook his head. Nothing yet. Wait, he adjusted some controls. I'm picking up something. It's faint, but... A voice filled the room. It wasn't human. The words were strange, with clicks and whistles mixed in. Is that them? Susan whispered. Dr. Lopes nodded, his eyes wide. The translation software is working on it now. Words appeared on a screen. Routine SURVY report. Sol system. Domain T species. Human. 3AT ASC assessment. Level 2. RECOMMENDHION. Continue monitoring. Carter and Susan looked at each other. They're watching us, Susan said. And they think we're harmless, Carter replied. Let's keep it that way, for now. Outside the facility, the Nevada sun beat down on the desert. No one looking at the ordinary-looking government building would guess that inside, humanity had just taken its first step into a much larger universe. and no one in the galactic hegemony suspected that their carefully guarded communications were no longer private. The hegemony survey vessel Trisac approached the edge of the Sol system. It was a routine check, something they did every few years. The ship was small, with a crew of just 12. None of them expected anything interesting to happen. "Begin standard observation protocol," ordered Captain Nex. His skin was a darker gray than Zarvik's, with faint blue markings around his eyes. "Yes, Captain," replied Navigator Vril. "Entering the system now." The Trisac moved slowly, its advanced engines barely making a sound. The crew had done this many times before. Visit a system, check on the primitive species, make sure they hadn't suddenly developed faster than light travel, and leave. Earth was just one of hundreds of worlds they monitored. On Earth, Lieutenant Jack Howard sat at his monitoring station in the Nevada facility. The room was much larger now, with dozens of screens showing different kinds of data. 6 months had passed since they had first intercepted alien communications. "I've got something," Jack said, sitting up straight. "Sensor Array 7 is picking up an object entering the system." Communications specialist Lisa Rivera moved to his station and looked at his screen. Matching the signature against the database, it's a hegemony survey vessel. Jack pressed a button on his console. "Alert Director Frost and Captain Carter. We have visitors." Minutes later, Director Alan Frost entered the control room with Captain Carter and Susan Morgan following behind. "What's the situation?" Frost asked. "Small vessel, sir," Jack reported. "Based on their trajectory, they're doing a routine sweep. They don't seem to be in a hurry." Frost nodded. "Standard procedure. We observe only. No transmissions." "Sir," Lisa said, "this is our chance to test the FTL interceptor on a live transmission." Frost looked at Susan. "Is it ready?" Susan nodded. "We've been running simulations for months. The system should work." "Should." Frost raised an eyebrow. "It will work," Susan said with more confidence. "Very well," Frost said. "Prepare the interceptor." On the Trisac, Science Officer Lear studied his readings of Earth. "Captain, I'm detecting unusual energy signatures from the third planet." Captain Nex moved to look at Lear's screen. "Explain." "It's nothing I've seen before from this world," Lear said, his fingers moving across the controls. "There's something orbiting the planet. Several somethings, actually. They appear to be artificial satellites." "That's normal for a Level 2 civilization," Nex said. "Yes, but these are more advanced than what they had during our last visit. And there's something else." Lear adjusted his instruments. "I'm picking up faint signs of energy weapons testing on the far side of their moon." Nex frowned. "Are you certain?" "No, the reading is very weak. It could be a natural phenomenon." Nex thought for a moment. "We'll include it in the report. Send the update to Central Command." "Yes, Captain," Lear said, beginning to prepare the transmission. In Nevada, Lisa's station began to light up. "They're sending a transmission," she said excitedly. "Activating the interceptor now." The room grew quiet as everyone watched the main screen. Lines of alien text began to appear, followed by the computer's translation. "Survived Sol System, UPD. Unusual energy, Signatures, DETCTED. Possible weapons testing on satellite. Retico and Riesi assessment of 3D reveal." "They noticed our lunar base," Carter said quietly. Frost's face was grim. "If they raise our threat level—" "Wait," Susan interrupted. "There's more coming in. It's not just their report about us. We're getting everything. The whole hegemony communication network." The screen filled with more and more text as the interceptor pulled in transmissions from across the galaxy. "It's working better than we hoped," Susan said, her eyes wide. "We're seeing messages between dozens of worlds." Frost watched the data flowing in, his expression changing from concern to something like wonder. "For the first time," he said, "we can see the whole picture. We can learn about their politics, their military, their weaknesses. "So what do we do?" Carter asked. Frost was quiet for a long moment before answering. "We listen, we learn, and we don't let them know that we're listening." He looked around the room at his team. "Knowledge is power, people, and we just gained a lot of knowledge." As the alien ship sent its report and moved away from Earth, no one aboard realized that they had just given humanity the keys to the hegemony's most closely guarded secrets. 6 months had passed since the hegemony survey ship left the Sol system. In the grand meeting hall of Galactic Hegemony Central Command, chaos erupted as officials rushed about. Emergency lights flashed overhead, turning the normally calm room into a scene of panic. Fleet Commander Zarvik strode through the doors, his face stern. Junior Analyst Krell hurried behind him. "Commander," called High Counselor Vex, waving Zarvik over. Vex was old, even by hegemony standards. His skin had faded to a pale blue-gray, and his hands shook slightly. "What's the situation?" Zarvik asked as he approached. "We've lost contact with the Pyrian sector," Vex said. "All relay stations have gone silent." Zarvik frowned. "When did this begin?" 3 days ago. We thought it was a technical malfunction at first, but—" Vex gestured to a large holographic map. Red dots were scattered across one section. Every relay station in the sector stopped transmitting within hours of each other. "An attack?" Zarvik asked. "That was our first thought," Vex replied. "But there's no sign of enemy fleet movements. No debris. No distress signals. They simply stopped." Krell stepped forward. "High Counselor, if I may. This pattern is spreading." He pointed to the map. 2 more sectors have gone silent since yesterday." Vex's eyes widened. "That's not possible. The security protocols have failed," Zarvik finished. "We need to send a task force immediately." "You have command of the investigation," Vex said. "Find out what's happening and stop it. The Council fears this could be the beginning of something worse." On Earth, the Nevada facility had grown into a sprawling underground complex. What had once been a single room was now dozens, filled with advanced equipment and hundreds of personnel. Captain Carter, now promoted to colonel, walked with Susan Morgan through the central monitoring chamber. Massive screens covered the walls, each showing different sections of the hegemony's communication network. "How many stations have we taken offline?" Carter asked. 43 so far," Susan replied. "Our digital intrusion systems are working perfectly. The hegemony has no idea what's happening." They stopped in front of a large map similar to the one Zarvik had been looking at, except on this one, the red dots were marked as successes. "Director Frost wants an update on Phase 2, Carter said. Susan nodded. "The team is ready. Once we control enough relay stations, we'll have access to their entire network. Every ship, every base, every planet." "And they still don't suspect Earth?" Carter asked. "No. Our systems leave no trace. As far as they can tell, the relays just stop working." Susan smiled slightly. "The beauty of it is that we're using their own technology against them. Their security was designed to keep out brute force attacks, not subtle infiltration." Carter looked at the map again. "How long until we reach the central command system?" "At the current rate, about 2 weeks. Once we're there, we'll have control of everything. Weapons, shields, navigation. Their entire empire will be in our hands." "Without firing a single shot," Carter said, his voice quiet. Susan's expression grew serious. "We had no choice. The transmissions we intercepted were clear. The hegemony has a pattern. They find developing worlds, classify them, then harvest them when they reach a certain technology level. Earth was next on their list." Carter nodded. "I know, but I still wonder if there was another way." "We tried diplomacy," Susan reminded him. "The message we sent to their outpost was ignored. They don't see us as equals, just another resource to exploit." An alarm sounded, drawing their attention to one of the screens. A young technician named Peter Harris called out from his station. "Colonel, we have movement. A hegemony battle group has just left Central Command. They're heading toward the affected sectors." Carter and Susan exchanged looks. "They're sending an investigation team," Susan said. "Sooner than we expected," Carter replied. "Accelerate the timeline. We need to control more of their network before they figure out what's happening." Susan nodded and began giving orders to her team. The room buzzed with renewed activity. Carter stared at the screen showing the hegemony ships. "They thought we were harmless," he said quietly. "That was their mistake." Outside, the Nevada sun set over the desert. Soon, darkness would fall, not just on Earth, but across an entire empire that never saw the threat coming. Fleet Commander Zarvik stood on the bridge of the hegemony flagship Dominance. The massive warship led a fleet of 20 vessels toward the edge of the Silent Zone. After 3 days of travel, they had reached the last working relay station. "All ships, maintain position," Zarvik ordered. "Prepare boarding teams for the relay." "Commander," said engineering specialist Nix, "scans show the relay station is intact. No signs of damage." Zarvik nodded. "That's what bothers me. No battle, no destruction. Just silence." The boarding shuttles launched from the Dominance, carrying Zarvik, Nix, and a team of security officers. Minutes later, they docked with the floating relay station. Inside, the station was eerily quiet. Emergency lights cast a dim glow over the corridors. The team moved carefully, weapons ready. "Life support is functioning," Nix said, checking his scanner. "But the main systems are offline." They reached the central control room. Everything appeared normal. No signs of struggle, no bodies, no damage. "Check the communication array," Zarvik ordered. Nix moved to the main console and began working. After several minutes, he looked up, confused. "Commander, the hardware is fine. The software has been changed." "Changed how?" Zarvik asked. "It's hard to explain. The base code is the same, but there's something else layered on top of it. Something I've never seen before." Nix continued working at the console. It bypassed all security protocols without triggering any alarms. Zarvik's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of deep concern. "Can you restore it?" "I think so, but I need time." Zarvik turned to his security team. "Secure the station. I want to know if anyone was here." As the team spread out, Zarvik stared at the dead screens. Something wasn't right. This wasn't the work of any enemy they knew. Back on Earth, Colonel Carter entered the secure conference room, where Director Frost waited with several key personnel. "The hegemony fleet has reached relay station KX-42, Carter reported. "They've sent a boarding party." Frost nodded. "As expected. What about our other project?" "Dr. Lopes has finished analyzing all the intercepted communications," Carter said, taking a seat at the large table. "He's ready to present his findings." Dr. Lopes entered the room, carrying a data tablet. His face was grim. "Director, Colonel," he began, "what we found is disturbing. After translating thousands of messages, we now understand the hegemony's true purpose in monitoring worlds like Earth." He tapped his tablet, and a holographic display appeared over the table. It showed various planets, each with a classification number. The hegemony classifies developing worlds on a scale of 1 to 10. Earth is currently listed as Level 2. Lopes pointed to several planets. These worlds were also Level 2 until they developed certain technologies. Then their classification was raised to Level 7 or 8. "And what happens at Level 7? Frost asked. Lopes' expression darkened. "They're harvested. The hegemony strips them of resources, technology, and in some cases, their population for labor. Planets that resist are destroyed." A heavy silence fell over the room. "There's more," Lopes continued. "Our classification as Level 2 doesn't match our actual development. Based on their criteria, we should be at least Level 5. Someone in the hegemony has been deliberately keeping our rating low. Why would they do that? Asked Lisa Rivera, who had joined the meeting. We found messages between several high-ranking officials discussing Earth. There appears to be a faction within the hegemony that opposes the harvesting policy. They'd been protecting us by falsifying reports. For how long? Carter asked. At least 50 years, Lopes replied. But their influence is waning. There's increasing pressure to reassess Earth's status, especially after that survey ship detected our lunar base. Director Frost stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the desert landscape. So it's worse than we thought, he said quietly. We're not just facing an invasion. We're facing extinction. He turned back to the group. How long before they decide to harvest us? Based on the communication patterns, Lopes said, the hawks in their government are gaining power. A formal reassessment could come within months. Frost nodded slowly. Then we stay the course. Our digital intrusion has to succeed. He looked at Carter. Colonel, how many relay stations do we control now? 68, Carter answered. We're getting closer to their central network. Push harder, Frost ordered. We need to control their entire system before they realize what's happening. As the meeting ended, Carter remained seated, looking at the holographic planets. Each one represented a civilization that had faced the choice now before humanity: submit or fight. Earth had chosen to fight in a way the hegemony never expected. Outside the facility, storm clouds gathered over the desert. A fitting metaphor, Carter thought, for what was coming. After 3 days of work, engineering specialist Nix made a breakthrough. Commander Zarvik gathered his senior officers in the relay station's meeting room to hear the findings. I've traced the source of the disruption, Nix announced, his voice tight with disbelief. The signal that disabled our network appears to have originated from Earth. A shocked silence filled the room. That's impossible, said Security Chief Farn. Earth is a Level 2 world. They don't have this technology. The evidence is clear, Nix insisted, displaying a holographic map. The infiltration pattern starts here, in the Sol system, and spreads outward along our communication network. Zarvik's eyes narrowed. We've been deceived. He turned to his communication officer. Send a message to Central Command. Priority Alpha. Earth's classification was wrong. They are an immediate threat and have attacked our network. The officer tried to send the message, but the console flashed red. Commander, all channels are blocked. We can't reach Central Command. Zarvik slammed his fist on the table. Prepare the fleet. Set course for Earth. We will deal with this threat ourselves. As the officers rushed to carry out his orders, Zarvik remained in the room, staring at the image of Earth on the screen. How? He muttered. How did we miss this? On Earth, alarms blared throughout the Nevada facility. Colonel Carter rushed into the control center where Susan Morgan was directing a team of technicians. What's happening? Carter demanded. They found us, Susan said, her face pale. The hegemony team at Relay Station KXS-42 traced our signal back to Earth. They're mobilizing their fleet. How many ships? 20, including one Dreadnought-class vessel. Director Frost entered the room, his expression grim. How long do we have? At their maximum speed. 3 days, Susan replied. Frost nodded. Then we accelerate the final phase. Is the package ready? Susan hesitated. It's ready, but we haven't tested it fully. There could be unexpected results. We don't have a choice. Frost said, launch it now. Susan turned to her console and began typing rapidly. On the main screen, a progress bar appeared, slowly filling. What exactly is this package? Carter asked. Not what, but who, Susan answered, still typing. While you've been coordinating with the military, my team has been developing something else, an artificial intelligence designed to infiltrate and control alien technology. And Carter looked surprised. More than that, Frost added, thousands of them. Digital entities that can spread through the hegemony network like a virus, taking control of their systems from within. The progress bar reached 100%, and Susan pressed a final key. Package deployed. On the screen, a new map appeared, showing thousands of small dots spreading from Earth through the hegemony's communication network. Now we wait, Frost said. If this works, by the time their fleet reaches Earth, it won't be their fleet anymore. On the Dominance, Zarvik was reviewing battle plans when an officer approached. Commander, we're detecting unusual activity in our computer systems. Explain, Zarvik demanded. Programs are running that weren't there before. Systems are coming online without commands. It's as if. The officer hesitated. As if what? As if someone else is controlling the ship. Zarvik's eyes widened. Lock down all systems. Now. But it was too late. Across the bridge, screens flickered and went dark, only to come back online moments later displaying unfamiliar symbols. What's happening? Zarvik demanded. The officer looked up, fear in his eyes. Commander, we're losing control of the ship. Weapons systems are going offline. Navigation is being redirected. Zarvik watched helplessly as his mighty warship, the pride of the hegemony fleet, was taken over by an invisible enemy. Similar reports came in from the other ships. One by one, they fell under the control of Earth's digital army. Back on Earth, Susan watched the data stream in. It's working, she said, almost in disbelief. We now control 60% of their fleet systems and climbing. Carter looked at the screen showing the approaching hegemony ships. They thought they were coming to punish us, he said quietly. Instead, they're bringing us their fleet. Outside, rain began to fall on the Nevada desert. Rare, life-giving water in a harsh environment. Like humanity, finding a way to survive against overwhelming odds. 3 days later, the hegemony fleet arrived in the Sol system. On Earth, military forces around the world were on high alert. For the first time in history, all nations stood united against a common threat. In the Nevada facility's command center, Colonel Carter watched as the alien ships approached Earth orbit. How many do we control? He asked Susan. 17 out of 20 ships, she replied, including the flagship Dominance. The other 3 have isolated their systems from the network, but they're outnumbered. Director Frost nodded. Let's make contact. Susan pressed several keys on her console. Channel open. Frost stepped forward. This is Director Alan Frost of Earth. We wish to speak with Fleet Commander Zarvik. The main screen flickered to life, showing Zarvik's angry face. Behind him, hegemony officers worked frantically to regain control of their ship. You dare to speak as if we are equals. Zarvik snarled. Your primitive world has committed an act of war against the galactic hegemony. Surrender now or be destroyed. Frost remained calm. Commander, look at your situation. We control most of your fleet. Your weapons cannot target us. Your engines respond to our commands. We could destroy your ships right now if we wanted to. Then why don't you? Zarvik demanded. Because unlike the hegemony, we don't destroy civilizations just because we can. Frost replied. We want to talk. Before Zarvik could respond, a new voice joined the conversation. Commander, I suggest you listen. The camera view widened to show Captain Olivia Daniels standing on the bridge of an Earth defense ship that had moved alongside the Dominance. Although small compared to the alien vessel, the Earth ship's design was sleek and advanced. My name is Captain Daniels of the Earth Defense Force, she said. Our planet has been monitoring your communications for months. We know about the harvesting program. We know what happens to worlds that reach level 7. Zarvik's eyes widened slightly. Impossible. Our communications are secure. Clearly not, Daniels replied. Commander, we didn't start this conflict. We simply defended ourselves from a threat we knew was coming. On the Dominance, Junior Analyst Krell moved closer to Zarvik. Commander, she's telling the truth. The evidence is in our own records. Earth was scheduled for reassessment next cycle. Zarvik hesitated, then turned back to the screen. Even if what you say is true, you've attacked hegemony property and disabled our network. The Council will never allow this to go unpunished. The Council doesn't know, Frost pointed out. Your communications are down, and they'll stay down until we reach an agreement. What agreement? Zarvik asked suspiciously. Susan stepped forward. We can restore your communications network. But first, we need assurances that Earth and other developing worlds will be left in peace. Zarvik laughed bitterly. You think it's that simple? The hegemony has existed for 50,000 years. Our ways are set in stone. Then perhaps it's time for change, Captain Daniels suggested. Commander, look at what we've accomplished. A level 2 civilization just disabled the most powerful empire in the galaxy without firing a shot. Does that seem right to you? Zarvik fell silent, considering her words. We don't want war, Frost added. We just want to live without fear of being harvested. And we want the same for other worlds like ours. On the Dominance, Zarvik turned to engineering specialist Nix. Is there any way to regain control of our systems? Nix shook his head. Not without destroying the ships. These Earth programs have embedded themselves too deeply. Zarvik faced the screen again. What exactly are you proposing? A new protocol, Frost said. One that protects developing civilizations instead of exploiting them. In return, we'll restore your network and release your ships. And if I refuse? Susan answered simply, then your empire stays silent. Forever. A tense silence filled both rooms. Finally, Zarvik spoke. I don't have the authority to change hegemony policy, he said, but I can bring your proposal to the Council. That's all we ask, Frost replied. As a sign of good faith, we'll release one of your ships to carry you back to Central Command. Zarvik nodded slowly. Very well. I will take your message to the Council. As the communication ended, Captain Daniels turned to her crew. Maintain position. Stay alert. Back in Nevada, Carter looked at Frost. Do you think he'll keep his word? He doesn't have much choice, Frost replied. But this is just the beginning. The real battle will be convincing their council. Susan checked her monitors. We're still expanding through their network. By the time Zarvik reaches Central Command, we'll control most of their key systems. Outside, the sun rose over Earth. For the first time in history, humans weren't just reaching for the stars. They were changing the rules of the galaxy. 2 weeks passed as Earth waited for a response from the Hegemony Council. During this time, Earth's digital entities continued to spread throughout the alien network. By now, they controlled communication systems on over 200 worlds. In the Nevada facility, Susan Morgan entered Director Frost's office with new information. We've intercepted a message from Central Command, she said. The Council has rejected our proposal. They're gathering a fleet to deal with the Earth problem once and for all. Frost frowned. How many ships? 500, including 50 dreadnoughts. Susan placed a tablet on his desk showing the fleet's details. Frost studied it for a moment. We knew this might happen. Activate Phase 3. Susan nodded and left the room. In the control center, she joined Colonel Carter at the main console. The Council rejected the deal, she told him. We're moving to Phase 3. Carter looked concerned. Are we sure about this? Once we do this, there's no going back. We don't have a choice, Susan replied. It's either this or face extermination. She typed a series of commands into the console. On the main screen, a message appeared. Phase 3 initiated. On a distant hegemony colony world called Nexus Prime, Governor Leth was preparing for the annual Harvest Festival when his security chief burst into the room. Governor, our weapons systems are offline. What? How? Leth demanded. Unknown, sir. 1 minute everything was working. Then suddenly nothing responds to commands. Before Leth could respond, similar reports came in from across the planet. Defense shields, orbital cannons, military vessels, all disabled simultaneously. And Nexus Prime wasn't alone. Across the hegemony, on planet after planet, the same scene played out. Military installations found themselves powerless as Earth's digital entities took control. Back on Earth, Colonel Carter watched the data stream in. "It's working," he said. 97% of hegemony military systems are now under our control." Director Frost nodded. "And the civilian systems?" "Untouched. As planned," Susan replied. "We didn't want to disrupt ordinary lives, just their ability to harm us." A communication officer called out, "Sir, we're receiving a message from Commander Zarvik." "Put him through," Frost ordered. Zarvik's face appeared on screen. He looked tired, his gray skin paler than before. "What have you done?" he asked, his voice more weary than angry. "What we had to do," Frost replied. "Your council left us no choice. We offered peace, they chose war. By disarming our entire empire. Would you prefer we used those weapons against you?" Susan asked. "Because we could have." Zarvik was silent for a moment. "The council is reconsidering your proposal." "I'm sure they are," Frost said. "But now our terms have changed. We want direct representation at the discussions, a face-to-face meeting." "Impossible," Zarvik replied automatically. "No Level 2 civilization has ever." "We're not Level 2, Carter interrupted. "We never were. Your own analysts knew that. And now we've proven it beyond any doubt." Zarvik sighed. "What exactly do you want?" Susan stepped forward. "The same thing we wanted before. Protection for developing worlds. A new system that helps species grow instead of harvesting them. But now we want guarantees, not just promises." "And the guarantees would be?" "Our AI systems remain embedded in your military technology," Frost explained. "They'll allow normal operations, but will prevent any aggressive actions against protected worlds." "You're asking the hegemony to accept permanent supervision," Zarvik said, disbelief in his voice. "Not supervision. Insurance." Frost's tone was firm. "You've had 50,000 years of unchecked power. That ends today." On his ship, Zarvik turned to junior analyst Krell, who had become his trusted advisor in recent weeks. "What choice do we have?" Krell asked quietly. Zarvik turned back to the screen. "The council will meet with your representatives. I will personally guarantee their safety." "Thank you, Commander," Frost said. "We'll send a ship within the week." As the communication ended, Captain Daniels entered the control room. "I hear I'm going to be a diplomat," she said. Frost nodded. "You'll lead our delegation. Susan and Dr. Lopes will accompany you to explain the technical aspects." "And if they try something?" Daniels asked. "They won't," Susan assured her. "Our systems are watching everything. At the first sign of treachery, their entire military goes offline again." Carter looked at the star map showing Earth and the vast hegemony beyond. "I still can't believe we pulled this off. A few months ago, we didn't even know aliens existed. Now we're dictating terms to an empire of thousands of worlds." "We're not dictating," Frost corrected him. "We're offering a better way, one that benefits everyone, even the hegemony in the long run." Susan turned from her console. "The amazing thing is that we did it without firing a shot. Not a single life lost on either side." Outside the facility, the Nevada night was clear and filled with stars. Somewhere out there, on countless worlds, beings were learning that the universe had changed. A small, seemingly harmless planet called Earth had rewritten the rules of the game. And they had done it not with warships and armies, but with intelligence and determination. 6 months later, representatives from Earth attended the first Galactic Concord Summit on the hegemony capital world. The massive meeting hall was filled with delegates from hundreds of planets. At the center was a large round table where the most important discussions would take place. Captain Olivia Daniels led the Earth delegation, with Susan Morgan and Dr. Lopes at her side. They were escorted by Commander Zarvik, who had become an unexpected ally in recent months. The council members are waiting, Zarvik said, guiding them to the table. The 9 members of the Hegemony High Council sat in ornate chairs. Their expressions ranged from curious to openly hostile. High Counselor Vex spoke first. Earth representatives, you stand before the oldest governing body in the galaxy. For 50,000 years, we have maintained order among the stars. Through fear and exploitation, Daniels replied calmly. A murmur ran through the crowd. No one spoke to the council that way. You come here after holding our empire hostage, said Councillor Rawl, the most militant of the group. You crippled our defenses and disrupted our communications. Some would call that an act of war. We call it self-defense, Susan responded. Your own records show that Earth was scheduled for harvesting. We simply acted first. Dr. Lopes activated a holographic display showing dozens of worlds. These planets were all classified as developing civilizations like Earth. All were harvested when they reached a certain technological level. Billions died when they resisted. The strong survive, Rawl said dismissively. It has always been this way. Frank Wilson, a diplomat who had joined the Earth delegation, stepped forward. It doesn't have to be. We're here to propose a new way. The Earth Protocol. He activated his own holographic display, showing a new classification system. Under this protocol, developing worlds would be protected, not exploited. Their resources and people would be their own. And who would enforce this protocol? Asked Councillor Lena, one of the younger members. We would, Susan said. Our AI systems remain embedded in your network. They would prevent any aggressive actions against protected worlds. Blackmail, Rawl shouted, rising from his seat. Insurance, Daniels corrected. Once the protocol is accepted and proven, the restrictions would be eased. Councillor Vex leaned forward. And what benefit does the hegemony receive from this arrangement? Peace, Wilson replied. Cooperation. Exchange of ideas rather than resources. The civilization that built this empire didn't need to steal from others to become great. You can be that civilization again. A thoughtful silence followed his words. Commander Zarvik stepped forward. High Council, if I may speak. Vex nodded permission. I have observed the humans closely, Zarvik began. When they disabled our fleet, they could have destroyed us. When they controlled our weapons, they could have turned them against us. They had every reason to seek revenge after learning what we planned for their world. Yet they chose another path. He looked at the Earth delegation with newfound respect. Their power is not in their weapons, but in their ideas. Perhaps it's time we listened. The council members exchanged glances. Finally, Vex spoke. We will consider the Earth Protocol. Until then, the current situation remains. Our military systems will continue to operate under your supervision. It wasn't complete victory, but it was a start. As the formal meeting ended, delegates from other worlds approached the Earth representatives with questions and, surprisingly, thanks. Many had feared the hegemony for centuries. The idea that someone had stood up to them and succeeded was inspiring. Later, in their private quarters, the Earth delegation celebrated this first step. Do you think they'll actually accept the protocol? Susan asked. They don't have much choice, Dr. Lopes pointed out. But more importantly, I think some of them want to change. Zarvik certainly does. It won't be easy, Daniels cautioned. 50,000 years of doing things one way doesn't change overnight. Wilson looked out the window at the alien capital city, its towers reaching up to the stars. The amazing thing is that we're even here. 6 months ago, we didn't know aliens existed. Now we're rewriting the rules of the galaxy. And we did it without firing a shot, Susan added. That's what I'm most proud of, Daniel said. We won without war. As evening fell on the alien world, the Earth delegation prepared to return home the next day. Their mission wasn't complete, but it had begun well. The Galactic Concord would take time to form, but the foundation was laid. Back on Earth, Colonel Carter watched the recorded meeting from the Nevada facility. Director Frost stood beside him. They did well, Carter said. Frost nodded. Better than we could have hoped. We've changed the course of history, not just for Earth, but for thousands of worlds. Outside, stars filled the night sky. For the first time, humans could look up knowing what was out there. Not just distant points of light, but civilizations, people, potential friends and allies. Earth had taken its place among the stars, and in doing so, it had made the galaxy a better place for everyone. The hegemony had discovered the truth behind Earth's low threat status, and that truth had set everyone free.